Hey guys, and welcome to Little Black Book 91. We're talking to you guys about this show right here.
Said that some people might say that vulnerability is the new sexy.
So we thought we'd just do a little bit of a reaction to the conversation between, hold on a minute, sorry, blowing my ears out. Thought we have a little conversation around vulnerability in regards to this podcast. I think it's a really good conversation between Abba Preach, I think Sean Bodie's man, I've forgotten his name, and the two other guys. Well, really great conversation. They really gave different perspectives. So sit tight, hold tight, and let's have a great conversation going forward. Hey, do me a favor. If you're new to the channel, like it, share, subscribe, click on the bell button for notification of what uploads. And for those of you who are returnees, you already know what it is, baby. You got the minerals. You got the minerals. Let's get into the video, man. Let me see it, baby.
And brings up the fact that some people feel like vulnerability is the new sexy. And I think there's nothing more like cringe to me than like slogan for men's pain. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, because then it kind of feels like you're I guess mainstreaming or monopolizing off of somebody's hurts or somebody's pain.
Yeah, it just feels like you're commercializing
Yeah.
it. When slogans are used, they're used normally in marketing terms
Yeah.
or to galvanize people. And I just feel like when it comes to something so personal and deep and hurtful for a lot of people, when you hear something like vulnerability is the new sexy, the one thing you don't want to do is hear someone say, you being vulnerable is sexy.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know? And I don't know if you've had this experience, but you guys ever been vulnerable with a girl and shared some deep and they went, aw,
Yes.
and you just went, ugh.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what? It's mad. It's mad. You know what? The first premise of what they're talking about is vulnerability being sexy. All right, listen. I'll be honest with you. I think vulnerability is sexy. I think there's an ounce of sexiness that comes with being vulnerable. All right, but vulnerability in the right time and right season and in the right moments and with the right person. Right, because vulnerability here is a show of weakness, and it's actually one of the arts of seductions. Right, showing this kind of weakness, although there's manipulation with it, but there's a lowering of defense that allows somebody to see you for who you truly are, almost like the diamond that's refined to show its true quality and true value. Right, once it's chipped away. But I do also understand what he said about that, you know, vulnerability being this slogan, vulnerability is sexy, being a slogan, being commercialized, and it's men's pain that's being commercialized. So I definitely understand that, because what you don't want, okay, is to be trying to fashion, business almost out of men sharing their inner thoughts and their inner feelings as a way to almost market it to the world as if that this shouldn't be normal, number one. And number two, as if this is something that it's almost like when you know how diamond rings have been commercialized now. So like people never used to have diamond rings, people. Okay, diamond rings or diamonds being a girl's best friend was marketed. It was commercialized so that you can buy. Okay, all right. It was commercialized. What you don't want to do is start commercializing men's feelings, because this is something that's personal for your relationship. But I stress that I'm not too against it, because I totally understand that even within the commercialization, what it's doing is normalizing that men, it is okay to be open with your feelings. Because you have to understand, what has been commercialized is men being stoic, which is almost showing no emotion. I don't get hurt by things. I'm standing strong. And partly, I always say this, having a good emotional regulatory frame is important. There has to be a level of stoicness as a man, because there are things that are happening in your life that you can't always emotionally react to in a way that will paralyze you from acting. No, you need to sometimes put those emotions aside and actually be logical and analytical about what's happening and make moves. Do you understand what I'm saying? Action needs to be had at points and times. Sometimes emotions can paralyze us. So there are points and times, seasons that are needed for when we can be vulnerable. And there's times and seasons where we also have to understand that we need to be stoic as men. But I hear both points at the moment.
Just hurts.
Yeah. You know, because they think it's
Take
cute.
the wind out of
I
your
think it's cute.
sails.
It's like,
Yeah.
I'm cute to you.
Yeah.
And me being in pain is cute.
You made the same noise to me that you make when you see a puppy.
Yeah.
Like that's
That's
not
what it is.
a,
I'm a
that's
poodle
not a
right now.
good, you know,
That's
like
not.
I'm.
That's not.
Yeah.
That's not.
When women do that, What they don't realize that they don't know how to handle a safe space. They don't. When they say it's because they don't actually fully appreciate what it takes for a man to be that vulnerable to them. They're actually not sure what to do, right? Because somebody who understands somebody's pain, has gone through something very traumatic or difficult, doesn't say When women tell me their problems, or when man them tell me their problems, I don't say Why would that come out my mouth? So a woman saying doesn't fully appreciate or understand the gravity of what you've gone through. Therefore, she isn't the right one. Or she needs to learn how to be, how to act in safe spaces. You know what I mean? Right? So let's, that's not nothing to do with commercialization now. That's to do with the fact that those women who are doing that do not know how to handle that. There are lots of women out there who have a lot of toxic masculinity or understand what toxic masculinity is, but they themselves actually surrender to toxic masculinity. The way they see men and the way they expect men to behave, they will say, or come on, grow up, or man up. In fact, I was on a Clubhouse the other day, and I said, one of the girls was talking about that Luke should man up, and I said, why are you saying he should man up? That's precisely the toxic masculinity we're talking about. Why are you saying he should man up? Right? That term right there is the problem, without the full explanation of what we actually really mean. Do you see what I'm saying? Okay, so we gotta be very careful what kind of language we use, especially when we come into men. But I totally understand, in terms of what they're talking about at the moment. It's great conversation as well.
Cool.
So since we said that, I'm gonna give you a chance to rebut before we go in. You know what I mean? Because I know this is your thing.
Yeah, I'm processing. I think when I say vulnerability is the new sexy, it's more so to normalize vulnerability for men, right? Because we haven't had a space to be vulnerable, right? For the most part. So I think for us as men to be better fathers, be better husbands, be better just people in general, I think the only way you're gonna have a strong bond with someone, like a completely strong bond, is also through vulnerability, right? So I'm not looking at it as like, hey, I had some childhood trauma. You feel me?
This is
I'm not talking about like that.
Yeah,
I'm
but
just
the
like,
way
maybe it should be
what I
vulnerability
hear
is the new healthy.
is that motherfucker.
Ooh.
Because when you trying to
That's
say,
what it should be.
because when I hear is that motherfuckers are gonna try to be sexy.
like use it
Yeah.
and
I'm hurt.
Trauma.
Yeah.
It's crazy because the way you guys flipped it and talking about how you're using men's pain.
No, but that's real though. That's real. I mean, I hear the argument they're making now as well, which is that, and there's a great point by the gentleman on the left and right. He said maybe we can change it to vulnerability is a new healthy. You know what I mean? I mean, in a sense, I think. That term would actually be really good as well, because it's healthy to show a level of weakness. And I say weakness in terms of exposing what makes you weak, exposing stuff that will that have hurt you or impacted you. Those things are healthy when you're doing it with the right person at the right time and the right season. But yeah, I love what Albo and Preachers are saying there, where he just obviously, got childhood trauma. That's sexy. Like, again, I think that's an extreme. I don't think people are going to take it there, but men and women are always going to abuse something that is good, right? So, but I hear what you're saying. There's a chance that people will do that, right? Oh, I got childhood trauma, but they already do that. That's the point. Men especially already do that. They already use their childhood trauma. They already use their childhood. It's one of the what we call dark arts. They will use part of their things that they've gone through that are emotional, okay, and use it against a woman and say, "Oh, I've been through such a hard life." Like, let's say, "Oh, I watched a show the other day, F-Boy Island," and he was like, "Yeah, I was adopted, and me and my sister, da 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 da," and he said it himself. I only said it because I know she would emotionally begin to open up and say, "Oh, he shared this with me. That means he must be open." So men especially are already doing this. This is why men are saying we don't want people to use it as a weapon, because they know they use it as a weapon already. You know what I'm saying? So it's about being able to understand that we're not using it for evil, we're using it for good. Vulnerability is healthy, and it can also be sexy. But again, I definitely hear their sentiments and their thoughts around this as well.
My first thought was like, dang, that was my fuckboy self. Because I definitely would come in like the hurt bird real quick.
I'ma talk to
you
the
know?
lady.
Yeah, sometimes people use vulnerability as a tool to manipulate because women covet that.
Yeah.
And they feel like they build a special bond with you. It's very easy to come in and be like, this is what happened to me, and they're like, oh, we have a special bond.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And so now after that, getting the cheeks is mad easy. You
Yeah,
feel me?
yeah,
So
yeah.
obviously people can use in that context, but I don't disagree with the goal that you're saying. I
Yeah.
think the way you're getting there may not be the most
Oh, it's bumper
effective.
sticker.
Because
Yes.
women might see that as cool. I can assure you that men will hear vulnerability is a new sexy and recoil.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
one thing that I noticed when talking to dudes and having male only spaces
Fair
or
dues.
talking about deep hurtful things is the last thing you want to do in that moment is be coddled.
I hear that.
You
Real
want someone
spit.
to acknowledge your pain, yes. You want to say someone like, okay, I'm here listening.
Yeah.
The last thing you want them to do is like, it's okay to be weak.
Yes.
It is.
You don't
But
want to
wait,
see
wait,
it that
but
way.
do you think vulnerability is a sign of weakness?
People internalize it that way, and I would say by definition, okay, by definition,
So this is an interesting part of I think the conversation, right? What is vulnerability, right? And I'll even just bring up a definition. What is vulnerability? Okay. So what is meant by vulnerability? Okay, vulnerability, the quality or state of being exposed to the possibility of being attacked or harmed, either physically or emotionally, right? Let me get another definition of vulnerability in the sense of defenselessness, susceptibility, weakness, powerlessness, passivity, liability. These are words that kind of related to vulnerability, the state of being left without shelter or protection against something harmful. All right, so when you begin to show your vulnerability, what you're saying is, and again, remember, and this is why it really depends on the context, because when I'm sharing, let's say for instance, if I'm sharing a vulnerability, it may no longer be a vulnerability of mine now. It may have been. For instance, I may share, I once beforehand, I used to cry when I used to go to bed. Okay, I won't tell you that, right? And I don't do that now, right? So when you get on me, I've already healed from that. It's like if you try to throw it against me, I'll be like, well, I know that now I can't trust you with a certain information, but I know that obviously you're not good with this kind of stuff, right? I'm not going to come back to you, but it's not going to hurt me in that sense. But there are some vulnerabilities that are still current and still fresh, where you share, I've been through X, Y, and Z, and the person may use it against you. So yes, vulnerability is it's not even a sign of weakness. It's not a sign of weakness. It's a sign that, okay, I understand that there are aspects of my life that have happened to me where have been powerlessness. There are aspects of my life where I have been weak. There's aspects of my life where I've not been able to fend for myself. That's what vulnerability really should be entailing. Because the God that we serve, Christ Jesus, okay, was vulnerable. We saw him weep. We saw him on a cross forgive people. We saw him, speak to people who other people might have considered to be the wrong ends of the society, right? He never put himself on a pedestal. He made himself vulnerable in the sense of anybody could access him. That's why someone could say, touch the hem of his garment. He said, the virtue has left me, right? It was easy for him to do that, easy for him to say that because he was vulnerable. That's why he can have that conversation by the woman at the well, the John 4 Samaritan woman, where he says, you have 5 husbands. And he can say that because he's vulnerable himself. He was exposed when he was there. He was a prophet, but he was exposed with nobody around him, And the Samaritan woman comes to talk to him. Being vulnerable doesn't mean you're weak, but the society we live in uses vulnerability as weakness. And the reason why is because what we do is we live in a world that's dirty. We live in a world that's evil. And that information can be used against you to form pictures about you, to form ideas about you, right? So let's say you say, oh, look, I cried in my bed. Now someone's going to question your masculinity. So there's some truth to what he's saying. The way the world looks at vulnerability, yes, it is a weakness. It's a crutch at points in time.
what it means to be vulnerable
Is to be
is
weak.
to show your weaknesses.
See, I disagree.
But that's the
that's
definition.
Okay.
That's the definition. When you're vulnerable, you are weak. You're in
But
a
I
position
can
of
agree
weakness.
with you on the other side that by showing that you build a stronger bond with that
Yeah.
person, it shows that you're willing to trust, and that takes
Yeah.
character. But it doesn't change the fact that, because at the very weak, when you show your weaknesses, right, whatever it is, whatever that can hurt you, they can use that to hurt you.
Sure,
it
they
is
can
real.
use to weaponize. Yeah.
Exactly.
But see, I look at vulnerability as bravery
It can be brave as well. It can be both things.
because it's hard to be vulnerable.
It's
It
brave
takes
to
courage,
be,
it takes bravery.
It's brave to take, but being in a position of vulnerability is weak.
Is
Yeah, I mean,
And you're showing your weakness.
it goes.
well, you're letting your guard down.
and that's not weak.
It depends who's it with.
Well, it
Because
goes
if
back
they're-
to
Again, and that's the point. So again, lowering the guard down. Yes, somebody could hurt you, right? Someone could get at you. Someone could even injure you. Basically, what you're saying is, I'm removing my emotional armor, and at this point in time, somebody could get at me, right? But we wouldn't say to somebody, oh, if you are, let's say you are wearing physical armor, right? You're wearing physical armor, and you take that physical armor off. We wouldn't call that person weak. We might call him foolish for taking off his physical armor if there was a war going on and the war hadn't ended. But once the war is ended and he's in a safe place and he removes his armor, nobody calls that soldier or that warrior weak. When you're in a safe place and you release that vulnerability, it's not weak to do so. Do you see? In the wrong time and in the wrong season, you're going to be exposed and you're going to be made to feel weak and foolish and stupid, right? So having this armor is essential for being in the battlefield. Having the emotional armor is essential when you don't know this person. We take off that armor and become vulnerable to one another and show that sign of weakness, because I don't want to say sign of weakness, but we show we expose ourselves in a sense, right? We allow someone else to see that there are, I guess, let me keep it as that, weak points. There are points that can be attacked. There are points that can be taken out. There are points that can be easily hurt. And we show this to people who genuinely love and care for us, so that we can now begin to build strong connections with one another. Okay? So both of them are correct. It can be a sign of strength, but it also can be a sign of weakness. It generally can.
You're gonna weaponize.
Exactly. But the whole thing that makes it strong is that you're willing to be weak in front of that person.
Right.
You're willing to say, this is where you can kill me. You know what I'm saying?
Well,
so basically you're saying, you're giving the person and you're saying, you can hit me right now. You can finish me. And that's okay, because
Yeah.
I trust you so much.
Yeah.
I trust you so much that I'm willing to let you have that moment. And like I said, to be weak in that moment isn't necessarily a terrible thing. It's not synonymous with being terrible. But what I'm trying to say is, you don't need to throw it in my face.
Yeah,
You don't need to throw it in my face that I'm being weak. Let's just accept that it's what's happening, but you don't need to say it. You feel what I'm saying?
it goes back to, like, because the way I
agree.
describe it is like, when you're being vulnerable, it's like, and I've said this on the podcast before, it's like you have this really antique vase that they can drop and shatter.
Yeah.
And you're trusting this other person to hold this expensive, rare, one-of-a-kind vase that you're giving it to them. It's not in your possession anymore. And if they wanted to, they could just, and it drops.
Yes.
Yeah.
That doesn't change I'm not saying that they would,
Right.
but that doesn't change the fact that they can. So I don't think,
But
I
also,
think we're
and with the vase thing, we've talked about how it takes courage and bravery even to say, preach, please don't drop my vase.
Right.
But I don't think
But
they're
I think that's
arguing
what I'm
that
trying to
part.
say.
Yeah.
Both of those things can be true at the same time.
Yeah.
Right?
I think this is your opportunity to kill me. That's like, I'm not even thinking that. I'm thinking vulnerability with my partner. I'm thinking vulnerability with my daughter. Vulnerability with
And I think that's the key point. Many of us men who are thinking they can kill me in this moment have been killed in that moment. That's where I think both parties are coming from. One side is coming from, actually, I haven't really been killed in those intimate moments. The other side is coming from, I've had a little bit. Either I've been the one that's killed someone else, or someone has killed me. Right? And so that's where two parties are coming from. This is where relationships really become difficult, because you have two parties and various levels of intimacy and defense and vulnerability that they're willing to share with the other person. Right? And as we begin to gain in trust, we begin to release the guard and lower down our defenses as much as we can. Right? So what he's describing is obviously one way, and Albert and Preacher are describing another point, right? But both are coming from different perspectives, but they're not saying anything that's wrong. They're dependent on perspectives. People who grew up in an environment which is very tumultuous and very crazy, very aggressive. There's no time for showing, for taking off the armor. They will struggle to see vulnerability as anything else but weakness and a moment to be killed. When someone has been in a safe space and hasn't had the opportunity to be killed by sharing their vulnerabilities, they're not going to understand where the other person's coming from. So I totally hear what both parties are saying, man. Great conversation. Honestly, love it.
With a family member or a close friend, right? It builds a stronger bond and a stronger
Undoubtedly.
relationship.
Yeah,
But again,
definitely.
Otherwise,
those
the surface.
Both of the things, those things are true. Even if you're not thinking about it, it doesn't change the fact that it's true. Like, even if you don't think they could kill me with this, they could kill you with it.
Yeah,
you know what I
they-
mean? You know,
yeah.
you're in a conversation, you just share the fact that you were hurt as a child with a woman, right?
Right.
You're being strong, you're being brave when you share that.
Sure.
Even
in
when
an
you-
argument, she'd be like, that's why you're a weak man, because you let someone touch you when you're 11. They can use that to shatter your self-esteem. You know what I'm saying?
Even if you share it with your daughter, and then your daughter can open her mouth at the wrong moment, she doesn't know it hurts you, but it can still shatter you. Yeah, daddy cries often in the open setting, and then you're gonna be like, no, that's not what. And people are like, he cries. She killed you with that because it killed your character, and even if you in that instance.
I mean, I hear what you're saying. So I do get that point. I mean, to be honest, it depends on what kind of vulnerability you've shared with someone else, right? Because you're right. Like they're various levels, degrees again of this vulnerability. And if, let's say, for instance, you've never shared with the audience that you cried, you know, I always say this all the time. I say, listen, when I'm in my closet and I watch a movie or TV series, niggas better know I cry. But I ain't gonna show you I gotta cry, right? So you already know I cry. When I watch Passion of Christ, I'll be crying. When I watch certain TV shows, I cry. Listen, I watch Snake Eyes and I start crying. I watched what's the film? Suicide Squad. I started crying a little bit when they start talking about dads. Yeah, I started crying a little bit. I'm gonna do it in my private area and cry. All right, I'm not gonna do it publicly. Now, if someone comes out and says Kojo cries in private, I'm like, well, I already done told them. So to be honest, I mean, you ain't really saying that, and I ain't really told them. The truth of the matter is, yes, when we have secrets, when we hold things close to our chest that are important to us, when they are exposed, they do hurt. So yes, someone can kill you with this secret.
When you were vulnerable with your daughter, she didn't want to kill you, but she could.
Yeah, unknowingly.
Yeah.
Unknowingly.
So just to be clear, it could be brave, it could be courageous, it could be a good thing, and it could still be a moment of weakness. And willing to be weak in front of a person is what makes it brave.
Right.
You can't be brave without that weakness.
Right.
Right. So I'm acknowledging both those things.
Love that
What I'm trying to say is,
point.
the
Oh,
last thing I
love
want when
that
I'm doing that is to
point.
be like,
Love that point. You can't have the bravery or the courageousness without the weakness. You're absolutely right. You know what I mean? It's not bravery until, just like when the Bible says, Joshua, you know, be not afraid, be courageous. You know what I mean? Right? Without the potential of you being afraid or you being weak or you not being able to to do something in your own power, there is no courageousness or bravery. Absolute great point there, man. This is some deep stuff, man.
reinforcing that. I'm already taking that step. Don't remind me. You don't need to say it, and you don't need to make it cute. I know it's brave. You don't have to be like, "Oh, you're so brave." Just be like, "I appreciate the fact that you did."
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
You know what I'm saying? Don't make it a weird thing. I guess.
It's like imagine your girl coming to you and something happened at work and she's crying and you're like, "Oh, you're sad." Yeah, she's crying and all of that shit.
Yeah.
We know that we.
So that's the thing.
But I also just don't think all women are going to come to you and be like, oh, like you're showing vulnerability.
No,
You know what I'm saying?
no,
They could be
all
like, oh
women.
shit, he's
No.
letting me in.
No, I agree. but
Because
I-
I've been trying to get in for however long.
Yes.
Finally, I'm here.
Just,
Right.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
the parallel that you made and we made is just like exactly when man wants to boom boom. You hear? A woman don't want to
Yeah,
give it,
and I'm not even
woman-
thinking that.
Yeah, but women don't want to give it up for X Y Z reason.
Right, no, for sure.
because it can be used against them.
So don't weaponize my vulnerabilities in new sex.
Exactly.
Yes, but the problem.
He's
the problem is sometimes
Don't bring sexy. Don't bring sexy.
I mean,
No, I don't want to give it up, man. I don't want to give up. But listen, look, guys, we've done our 20 minutes. Listen, if you want to watch this thing, I'll put the link down below in the description box. But it was such a great conversation and mature men just discussing real issues. I haven't watched the rest of the podcast. I'm gonna watch it during the course of the week. But if you're interested in it, go click on it. Subscribe to their podcast, like the video as well, show some love when you're there as well, man. Some great conversations. These are the kind of conversations we need to be showing more because they're positive, right? And they're educative and they're deep as well. So guys, make sure you like, share, subscribe, click on that bell button for notification of uploads. We appreciate you. Stay locked, stay loaded.